Join us and our friends as we fall down the rabbit hole of security wonder. If you're ready to see how deep it goes, you've found the right place. Pour your tea. You're not late for office hours. And now, our Red Queen, Tara Wheeler.
It is so great to see you folks here with us this week. We're going to do a little bit of a different thing this week. Instead of focusing on one specific person, we're going to talk a little bit more about small business news and cybersecurity. I am happy, as always, to welcome my colleague, dear friend, James Byerly of Secure Point Solutions. And it's just a joy to be here with you so that we can snark the hell out of this last week's news for small businesses and cybersecurity. So, James, how's it going this week?
Oh, not too shabby. How are you?
I am freebasing extremely caffeinated tea out of a green Stanley mug that is not a hip version of same. So that should tell you something. Anybody who's ever seen Yorkshire Gold tea, it's like tea, but like tea that like lifts weights and maybe wears like kind of an inappropriate muscle shirt.
The Jolt Cola of tea.
The Jolt Cola of tea. Yeah. Oh, I remember that. Do you remember Jolt Cola? And Surge. Oh yeah, so great. I remember my teeth hurting, right? Like the gritty stuff you got in your teeth after you drank that shit. It was so bad.
Like, why was this drink crunchy?
Oh, it was a little crunchy. And then you get like that in the you drink it. But to be fair, you saw God and the end of the function after you finish pounding one of those things.
Yeah.
And it was a 172 line function, and you thought that was a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But your Stanley cup is quite epic because it looks like you can fashionably sip a drink, but you could also maybe like brain a bear to get away, you know? So
bears are smarter than you think they are. And one of the greatest lines that's probably applicable to cybersecurity as well, too, is there's all these rangers talking about how you prevent bear attacks in like Yellowstone and national parks and stuff like that. And when I went camping last year with my best friend in Olympic National Park, I had to get a bear cam. And the user experience and interface on a bear can is a fascinating one if you've never really worked with it before. It's got like a pull tab here and a push button here so that you can unlock it. And it's that hard to get open because you don't want to ever feed bears.
Right.
And a Yellowstone ranger said, I think it was this last year, people said, why are these bear cans so impossible to get in and out of? And why do we have to have them in national parks? And the ranger said, the problem is that between the very smartest of all of the bears and the very stupidest of all the humans, there's a substantial overlap.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's some deep truth. There's lore in that one right there. Yeah.
This might bake your noodle a little bit.
Yeah.
I camped in Yellowstone when I was a teenager, and there was a sign there that said the following brands of bear canisters are no longer allowed to be used, as if like the bears had figured out how to open certain cans. And I'm like, could you imagine you packed for like an 8-day excursion, you got all your food in your bear can, then you show up and it's like, the bear's going to get into my food. Like, I'm going to go back. I'm going to give up.
I was just imagining here and like in the worst of all possible worlds. Hey, Rob, how's it going? It's so great to see you. We got the Jolt Cola going on here. Now I'm just sitting here imagining a bear on Jolt Cola.
Well, we kind of had that in the movie, but
have you seen Cocaine Bear?
Yes. It, for taking a short, very real, true news clip and turning it into an 1.5-hour movie, it actually was pretty darn good. Yes, it was gruesome and, in some cases ridiculous, but I'm like, I've seen movies far worse that had a plot that was so written out and like a whole movie based on a news article and a meme, and that's it. And off you go. So, yeah, bravo. I wonder what crazy, there's going to be a Florida Man movie or a Florida Man, like think like the anti-Avengers. And it's just various Florida Man things that they've done, throwing alligators into Wendy's drive-thrus.
Sharknado 7, Florida Man's Revenge. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like I'm speaking of this word to bring it into being right now. Sharknado 7, Florida Man's Revenge, right? Yeah. Okay. No, I think it's going to be absolutely, yeah.
Or if they decide to do another one of the Quiet Place movies and it's just going to be a bunch of Florida men down there rattling some empty beer cans as a trap, and then blowing up the critters, the big creatures with tannerite, and it's going to be on the Waffle House menu the next day. So,
I strongly agree, but not only do I strongly agree, I was just in Florida. I was just in Fort Lauderdale, and Fort Lauderdale is just so beautiful. I thought it was
Mhm.
absolutely incredible. One of the coolest things about Florida, and I got out of there about 2 days before Helene, and just we're thinking right now about all the folks dealing with Helene. We're going to talk
Absolutely.
about that a little bit later on too, because there are some disaster recovery and cybersecurity elements to this that are hitting small businesses and MSPs much harder in that region than they are others, and it's a real shame to see. Um, but I got out there just a couple days before Helene hit, which was good for me. But one of the things that's so cool about Florida, and if you're not there and you haven't seen this before, the lizards are so cool. The little gecko lizards and the big,
Mhm.
like the green ones, and the iguanas.
Iguanas.
The
Yep.
big iguanas, right? That the stripy tails. They just have zero fucks to give. These iguanas are absolutely glorious, right? They'll sun themselves everywhere. They're beautiful. They're bright emerald green. And I think iguanas are like the geese of the South, okay? Because they'll just leave crap anywhere, and it's so big, and you're like, is that from that lizard? And yes, it is. Like right near the pool and everything like that. But oh
Yeah.
God, that coast is outstanding. I watched people fishing off the piers in Fort Lauderdale, and they were going
Yeah.
after barracuda and tarpon, and what an incredible, beautiful coast that is.
It
Just walking
is.
out there.
It
Oh my
is.
God. When's the last time you were in Florida?
With you, Orlando was
That's
our
right.
last foray, and I want to say that we finally settled down and had a chat.
Yeah.
I feel like we might have had some lizards in listening distance or something.
We
So
did.
yeah, and it's the same way. Like I've been to Guam a number of times, and
Yeah.
I had a little gecko drop onto my hat while I was at
Aw.
an ATM machine, and somebody was like, "Dude, there's a lizard in your hat." I'm like, "Okay, well,
Aw,
I'm like, he's cool." So we got in
I
a
love
cab and we drove to Planet Hollywood, and then we went inside, and I realized, whoa, he's still like, I felt he's still there. So I stepped back outside. I was like, he's gonna fall off my hat. He's gonna get stepped on, and so I just went around a corner. I'm like, this isn't your neighborhood, buddy, but go free, go free. So
Oh, man.
Dylan, the haircut fish.
Hey, what's going on?
Some of my favorite human beings. Haircut fish is going to
Uh,
be flying out this way, so he and I can road trip for Wild West Hacking Fest. So that's going to be a
Amazing.
blast.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's going to be a killer con, folks. James, I know you're going to be out there at Wild West Hacking Fest. Before we skip too far over it, the last time we were in Orlando was for MSP GeekCon. And a
yeah,
serious shout out to everybody there. Amazing, amazing human beings. So I got a chance to meet for the first time in person, like Matt Lee and Jason
yeah,
Slagle, just incredible humans, inspiring, wonderful. I love the mental health initiative that Jason Slagle takes part in there.
yes.
Just, yeah, the Hackers for Health. It's so wonderful. Oh, and there's our boy, Tony Hunt. How's it going? So, Tony, how are you doing, sir? The incredible owner of Tony Hunt Consulting, and of course, I just saw that call out, folks. If you don't know what Operation Safe Escape is, Tony, throw a link up there for us, and we'll put this out there for folks that are dealing with digital domestic partner abuse and harassment online. Operation Safe Escape is the place I send them, and it's so important to make sure that you've got a place to send people. There's not enough smart, good people doing individual incident response for all of our friends. And honestly, this is the place we send people. They're good, smart folks over there. Throw them some cash. I like to throw them $100 every time I get mad at somebody pointlessly on the internet about anything, and I
Oh
feel like
Lord,
that's my karma check.
so you're broke, right?
Oh yeah, no, I'm broke because I get mad on the internet all the time. Did you see me 3 days ago? We got to get into the cybersecurity stuff, but I think I posted a question to people up like maybe a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I just want to watch a movie tonight that's like a woman overcoming heroic galactic obstacles, where the obstacles aren't dudes. And I was like, here's an example: Gravity, or, and hear me out on this, T2. Why Sarah Connor saves the universe from the robot apocalypse, and the gender of the T1000 and the T850 are irrelevant, right? So these are great movies. First guy comes in, he's like, "You're wrong. Mad Max Fury Road is not about overcoming the patriarchy." And I was like, "You are bad at understanding George Miller movies. That is not what's happening here." Oh man. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is amazing, Dylan. Yeah, Tony Hunt's here in the comments right here. Tony, if you want to throw that link up for the direct to the donation page, we'll throw it up as a banner here too. Absolutely, throw that up. So, yeah. Anything last you want to say on that before we kick it on over to that conversation we were going to have about speaking of the Dakotas?
Yeah, no, let's step on for the next thing.
Oh, heck and yeah, let's do it. Okay, so in cybersecurity news this week, one of the most fascinating things I saw was this right here. Dakota State University's Paulson Cyber and Economic Development Center just got a $1 million grant from the US SBA's Cybersecurity for Small Business pilot program. Now, this is more than it seems. First of all, I think many of the folks here have heard me say a couple of different times that the small business cybersecurity program from the SBA for this year has a $6 million budget. This is 1/6 of that budget. It's part of this budget getting allocated here. And what I've also said is that there are 33.6 million small businesses in the United States, and that $6 million basically covers about 18 cents per small business, or not enough money for me to have whipped cream on my broke latte this morning. Okay.
Yeah.
Million of those dollars just went to this program. This is one of the grants that was made. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this up there so folks can see the link for it right here. So it's important that we do study cybersecurity, and it's important that we understand how to approach this systemically. Honestly, James, I have a problem with this. I don't know how many of you watched the beloved TV show West Wing, and I don't want to sound too much like Ainsley Hayes here, but have we ever considered just giving this money to small businesses to let them improve their cybersecurity rather than continuing to study the problem, which, by the way, is going to be multi-factor authentication, shared passwords, problems with identity and password management, right? Like, what do you think on this one, James?
Well, so I think one thing is just kind of buried in the article is simply that's $1 million, and assuming that Dakota State is excellent stewards with that money, they estimate there's 90,000 small businesses in North Dakota, or sorry, South Dakota. That's $11 and change.
Okay.
You can't solve you can't solve any security problem, I think, with $11. About the closest you could get is buying as many bags of chips as that can get you, and everyone's sitting down and just talking about like avoiding phishing. Like that's the closest thing. I'm not saying that you have to throw a ton of money at security problems, but holy crap, $11. How do you make that stretch? We talked about $100, and I thought that was a little tough, but I mean,
yeah,
they're a good school. They have a great reputation with cyber. They're probably they're going to be at Wild West Hacking Fest. They're going to probably win the CTF again.
Really? Tell me more.
Yeah. So Dakota State, they're in South Dakota. I feel like I could be wrong, but I feel like they have won 3 out of the last 4 CTFs and been awarded black badges, and they got second place, I think, in the last year's or something like that. At some point, they're going to probably just be asked to no longer compete because they make everyone else look bad. But it is awesome to see some students throwing themselves into cyber the way they do. So I'll give them credit there. I just good luck making those dollars stretch where they need to go.
That's really hard, right? There's a difference between allocating that money to training people to do a really good job at cybersecurity, and you could probably put a pretty good program together for $11 million. But at some point, we've got to stop training this is training a batch of students in South Dakota to do a good job on cybersecurity is not the same thing as securing those small businesses in South Dakota. Right. And I've never lived in South Dakota, been a couple times. It's a beautiful, beautiful state. I'll see you folks in Sturgis in a couple of years, by the way. So we'll see. It looks like I might pick up a Heritage Softail next year. So I don't know if you're allowed to go to Sturgis when you ride a V-Star 1100 Classic like I do, even if it is as red as hell, which it is. So I think South Dakota is absolutely gorgeous, and I love that state. I'm going to say It wouldn't matter if it was Washington State, Oregon State, any of the places, Michigan,
Oh
Montana,
yeah.
places I've lived. You can't solve a problem in cybersecurity for $11, right? You can
Yep.
figure out a way to systemically address problems and study them, but at some point we have to stop studying that problem and start actually allocating those funds.
Yeah.
And let's be clear here. The problem is not that Dakota State University got $1 million. The problem is that we have parlously, cheaply, ridiculously allocated $6 million from the United States government to help solve small business cybersecurity problems for the year of 2024 to 2025. Our problem is not with Dakota State. Our problem is not with
Oh
the
no.
students. It is not with any of those. It's not with the small businesses that are falling behind. It's with the fact that we massively under budget and under prioritize the incredibly important impact of small business cybersecurity on the supply chain everywhere.
Amen. Amen.
There you go.
I'm
All
glad you're
right,
heavy.
people said. All right,
Yeah.
there we go. It's
It,
frustrating, Go ahead.
well, and I think even if they distributed that money out across those 33.6 million businesses, it's the same problem. You're still it's pennies, and it's not a there are the initiatives, the talking of the initiatives, the all the times on the Hill where people are talking and in committee hearings. You know what? Let's just take that money, take that, and then just set up a store of sorts that allows for small businesses to get some things. I know the GCA does some of that. They have,
Yeah.
but it's still like you got to go through. If you're going to get an antivirus, you got to go through the purchasing of the antivirus, and and
Here.
that's it. And Tony, that's
Yeah.
really really a great point. I mean, they're going to make that, they're going to use that money for good, but like how? And how do you decide amongst the 90,000 businesses what you're going to do? That
Yeah.
and
Incredibly important.
yeah.
Yeah. And Dylan's got a great perspective over here too. First of all, like this is also a state where we're also not seeing a whole lot of diversity in the folks coming out of there, and some real problems with local laws. So I want to be cautious and make sure that we are elevating voices of people that specifically grew up in South Dakota and are saying that there's some real problems there with local legislature on support for trans and queer folks who are in South Dakota. And so I know people self-select out of going to universities that are in the Dakotas right now, especially in South Dakota, as a result of knowing that these laws are in place. So there's a lot of ways where there's some problems here. But again, I want to walk this all the way back to the fact that we are not able to solve any problem in cybersecurity for $11, Dakota or no, right?
Right.
So that's the real challenge I think we're looking at. And the problem too is this is now something where we have small business owners who are afraid of getting hacked. A lot of the people that come to us, and get started with Red Queen, they're not actually really that worried about specific compliance frameworks. They're asking questions like, how do I stop myself from getting hacked? I'm scared of having stuff stolen from me. And I feel like that's something that really gets people started in small businesses on cybersecurity. The truth is that cyber attacks are now the thing that scares small business owners the most.
Yep.
All right. And I feel like that's something we've got to start focusing on, because I don't know how much the SBA has targeted that money to places where it's actually going to alleviate this fear, right? Like send it to the actual problem. This is where the problem is. Just in case anybody wants me to run the SBA, I can fix the whole thing in just a couple of minutes with a pen. I'll super run a government agency for you. So this is really what's going on is, and what this article describes is, the return on investment of somebody scamming a small business has now crossed the line to where it's profitable to do a couple $100 scam on a small business. The energy level it takes to do that is now worth it. And it didn't used to be the case. You used to want to try to get big scores from big businesses. And now, with the assist on AI phishing and no longer having to craft emails that idiomatically sound like American English, that use, open databases and stuff like that. Like, I feel like we could just do a demo on how to write a phishing email with Chat GPT and a little bit of information. coming from, well, maybe we'll try that sometime.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's our choice,
And on top of that, even ignoring the use of AI, for quite some time now, malware creators and threat actors have had subscription based tools that you can get. You can even get tech support, and you too can go into the business of phishing, phishing companies and ransomware if you want to, and there's not a high cost. So you said, that get $200 from a small business. If your little ransomware kit costs you $50 a month and you can hit 2, 3, 4 businesses a month, you're going to profit. And that really infuriates me, to think that it's in some ways that easy.
Yeah.
So
This
yeah.
right here, it's true. One disaster is standing between, more than a quarter of American businesses and this. And we've talked about the impact of the regulatory climate on small businesses before, and we can keep talking about it. But the truth really is, we've got to get to the basics of small businesses, and that education is just not happening yet. It's like lawmakers who keep trying to do things like ban porn instead of fix to solve childhood sexual trauma, instead of actually doing education, instead of doing consent training. And it's trying to fix, it's trying to treat a downstream symptom of an upstream problem that is
Yep.
expensive and difficult and can only be done when you actually know how to solve the problem and you address it where it is, with consent and assistance and education. I've had Savannah Sly on this webcast before, and Savannah Sly on this webcast before has said, just, it's so important, as she was talking about she was talking about the impacts of SESTA FOSTA, which have a lot of impacts on those of us in information security as we deal with the compliance regime around those. She said, look, these lawmakers are trying to treat a downstream problem. They want to bandage it over. They want to refilter the water rather than preventing the problem from happening to begin with. And it's expensive to train and educate small business owners in how to fix their cybersecurity problems. And we're just not doing that. We're just choosing not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it doesn't matter what the problem is. That people are always hesitant to try to find root cause and fix root cause. I mean, I've seen it in help desk. I rebooted this guy's computer because it was slow. You've rebooted this guy's computer 7 times now. Have you bothered to investigate why it's slow? Those are the things that happen, and this is going to just continue until somebody like you decides to go in there and I vote you for what, CISO of America or something.
I tried for that job once. They thought I was a little much. I'm actually not joking on that one. I'll be super honest on this one. I once applied for the CISO of the White House gig, and
There you go.
and I was the word kind of came out that I was overly opinionated, not on politics. I think, and I'm always happy to take feedback on this one. I think I've done a pretty good job of not of being able to listen to every side and be moderate. It's just I have no patience for stupid people, and I said that. I've said a couple of times that something's dumb when it is, and I feel like you got to be able to criticize just really terrible legislation and policies and people that don't understand what's going on in cybersecurity. And I'll always teach somebody that wants to learn, but don't play like you know what you're talking about when you don't.
Yeah, it's a thing of where you're maybe saying, all right, this is the dumbest idea you could have come up with, but
I
we're
didn't
gonna
say
now
it
sit
like
down and
that.
come up with something
I think I
else.
used more profanity.
Yeah, like it's very all very accurate.
I know. So, I look at this and I think about the implications of what we're talking about right now. And this is something that I promised I wanted to talk with you about. And I want everybody who's listening on the call right now. And by the way, hi Nicole, I see you over there over on LinkedIn too. This is awesome. I want everybody who's here and talking and commenting. I want you to throw something up here, because James and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday. You can't solve any cybersecurity problem for $11 in a small business. But we're just asking ourselves kind of speculatively. And I've had this conversation with Wendy Nather too. It's a great conversation. And it's about the security poverty line, which is a concept Wendy Nather came up with when she published an article in The Atlantic several years ago. It's really taken off as an explanation, a really intuitive one for why and how some businesses are just not able to handle their security requirements. They're below the poverty line when it comes to their ability, their competence, their appetite for understanding. There's 4 traits of it, and I forgot what all 4 traits of it are, but we'll get Wendy back on the conversation again and ask her about it. So we were talking about this yesterday. James, if you had, there we go, money, expertise, capability, influence. Bravo. Thank you. Exactly. So yeah, and again, Wendy Nather is an incredible human
I'm
being.
going to be
So
quoting that next week, so
yeah,
I
I
had that
bet
on hand.
you had it on tap. Yeah, it's a good one to
Yeah,
have on tap, like ready to
yeah.
go. So James, if you had $150 inside a small business for a year, you're a 30-person trucking company in Indiana, and you have $150 to spend on insurance, on cybersecurity, and you are an IT admin who's just now going, hey, we got to do something about this. How do you spend that $150? What do you do?
Hmm.
Assuming the time of that person doesn't count, which is a terrible assumption, but just assume that
Right,
doesn't count. You got 150
right.
bucks. Go. What do you buy?
So I would say you buy probably a Raspberry Pi that's
Mhm.
uh, and then you're going to throw Elastic on it. You're going to deploy Elastic agents. All that stuff is free. And you're going to turn on all the integrations you can get access to. And you're also going to set the paranoid mode as high as possible so that if something trips, it isolates the machine and then you deal with the false positives later.
Mhm.
But I think, that for me, because I always lean towards the end point. And especially with $150, you're, you know, you're not getting a fire. I mean, you're not getting a firewall, and a firewall is not going to protect you from phishing and things like that anyway. Admittedly, uh, an elastic stack isn't going to necessarily protect you from phishing, but it would certainly detect the things that might happen as the phishing is going on, impossible travel alerts, things like that. So and that's not even to say about monitoring of it, the care and feeding of it, the running of updates, which the updates and stuff will all be free, but the care and feeding, we use Elastic, and it takes some effort to keep it happy. So that's what I would do with that 150. What
Okay.
about you?
Um, there's a free thing I would have them do. I would have everybody in there subscribed to Have I Been Pwned with the domain. Absolutely would do that one. I would. It's not quite enough money to do it on an endpoint basis, but if we've got a small enough business, I might spend a little tiny bit of that watching a video or getting like a pamphlet course, maybe even like do one of like the $49 LinkedIn learning courses on tuning Microsoft Defender and whatever O365 options you've got available. It's a little
Yeah.
harder in Google, honestly. I'm going to be straight up.
Oh yeah.
Um, I would I would ensure I would enforce multi-factor authentication in Google if you can't do the thing with O365, which that could involve a couple dollars more in endpoint, which is fine. I would buy Adam Shostak's threat modeling, and I would use that because you want to have a small business understand what they're actually fighting against. And I feel like reading that is useful and understandable at almost any level. And I feel like I love this idea, actually. Dylan's got a great idea on this one, quarterly pizza parties with SEC awareness trainings and all the free things. I don't hate that as an example.
Yeah.
It can't be sushi. She can't afford sushi on $150. You could probably buy a couple pieces for 150 a year if you are training and explaining. At training and explaining, it might be the best. That might be the best damn idea I've heard so far. What do you think?
I like it too. I mean, you you and Dylan are coming at it from
Hmm.
the human side of security, and I love that, and it's something that we believe in too. Um, I approach it from the technical side, and the big reason is that I don't want Bob in marketing to be the one that decides that today's the day that their company goes bankrupt because they have downloaded a file or they've clicked a link or whatever the case may be. I want to be able to essentially neuter that payload, that, so if Bob's computer gets dusted in a ransomware attack, fine, but it didn't go any further. And those are, so although the human part is very important, we don't, as much as we talk about phishing and security awareness and all this, we're not infallible. I saw somebody on Twitter today, they said that they had gotten something, it was perfect. They clicked the link and it downloaded some sort of weird code extension file. The saving grace for them, they were running Linux. If
Wow.
they'd had a Windows machine, it'd have been game over. So there's there's always a technical and a human way of fixing things, but I want to, I understand that humans are humans are fallible, and I'll never say that they are a weak link, because I just feel that that's dehumanizing in a way. But there's someone that has to be defended as much as possible. Bryson Bort actually once said, and it's something that has resonated with me, is that humans aren't the weak link. They are just the largest attack surface out there.
Wow.
Because you think of all the ways that you can get to somebody, phone, text, email, chat, whatever. And we have this innate desire to want to help out. And that kind of hurts us. So protecting people from the technical standpoint is the really important thing there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And this is also the hard part about this. I don't want to bore everybody on this one, but it's growing to be more and more of an issue with small businesses specifically. I've got a note. Small businesses are beginning to really note and understand how much AI is a cybersecurity concern for them. And when I say this, I'm treading on thin ice right here, because AI has been an issue for small business for the last 30 years. It's just not been in the news in a way that most people understood, I think. So the reason this is something that we're talking about right now is that right now it's cheaper and easier to develop phishing links and scam people as a result of the massive and cheaper availability of large language models, right? That's not the same thing as generalized artificial intelligence. I'm not going to get into that debate right now. Nobody hit me in the comments. But the challenge here is that there's a lot of small businesses that are used to following instructions, and you get a phone call from somebody, you're used to just doing what the person on the phone says, and that really happens. Exactly. Sheila's got just such a great point right here, right? The technical and human side of small business these are the two pieces of it, and you can't solve anything technical without understanding why people think the way that they do.
Yeah.
How many times have we seen over the last couple of weeks just the number of folks who are saying, man, I'm an information security expert, and I just kept my dad from giving away his life savings in the very last piece of the defense in depth that I'd set up for him, right? Like this is just continuing and continuing to happen. How do you tell your customers, James? And just again, for folks that are on this conversation, we are, I run Red Queen Dynamics. We run the product that's a little bit like QuickBooks for small businesses for compliance, right? You do a little bit at a time and you keep your compliance slightly improving over time. James actually runs an MSSP that's the ground level here, that works with small businesses every day. How do you explain to somebody that they could have somebody who sounds exactly like their COO, their ops person, one of their truckers, call up and say, "Hey, I need $50. I need $500." How do you tell them that? What do you do?
So I mean, obviously the awareness training, there is a shift in how, it used to just be watch out for the phishing things, and then and now it's turning into those things like AI can impersonate a voice, or whatever the case may be. So so hopefully your training, if you are subscribed to some sort of training, hopefully it is moving with the new threats that are out there. But we talk about this, and it's like, if it's a personal matter, you need, or even a business thing, you need to have an out of band communication. or something. So like my, my kids have cell phones now, and I've said, hey, there are going to be some code words that, like we're going to use, because I need you to understand that there's people that could trick you. And, and same thing on a business. Somebody calls and says, truck broke down, you need to wire me $500 so I can get it fixed. Then we need some, we need some authentication. Now, a business, and this is, this is a big thing that comes from like the business email compromise. A business might tolerate getting tricked out of $50. So you have to decide as a business, what's a number that's going to make you nervous.
And that's why you read threat modeling, by the way.
Exactly.
Adam Show's text threat modeling. You figure out what your fear is, and then how to defend against it. But if you're not scared of losing $25, don't defend against losing $25.
Right.
If you're scared of it, learn to defend against it. Yeah, keep going.
And because we, previous company I worked with, we had a client who they got scammed out of 87 grand because it was the, I'm the CEO and I need money kind of thing. And then we've had other customers come to us because of BEC kind of being the trigger for them. And it's like, okay, this is a really simple thing, like if you have a spouse and you suddenly saw $1,000, get spent at like Kohl's or something, you might have a question. You might be like, hey, what are you doing over at Kohl's? What are you bringing me? But just having that way of like authenticating with the other side through, not through email or whatever, it's huge. And if you want to implement it for all money transfers, great. Also, another thing that's big, and I don't know where I was listening. Was it maybe with you? But the old changing the W-2, calling it or emailing in and everything, and getting a W-2 changed. Maybe having some 2-person integrity requirements there. So two people need to look this over. Two people need to make sure this makes sense, or something like that. Again, old company, somebody impersonated like the CEO and wanted to get their direct deposit changed. And the saving grace was like 2 weeks prior, following SOC 2 guidelines, we implemented a thing where company officers couldn't have just the accountant, make those kind of changes. It had to be another VP. So
I want to
those are things.
When you say that too, don't forget there's a very specific thing in cyber insurance that many of these places are looking for, which is at least 2 people have to sign off on a transaction of more than $25,000 being wired out of the company. It's very specific, and it's about your cyber insurance requirements. If you don't have that control in place, you'll need to get cyber insurance. So there's a reason we're doing this. It's not just about security. It's also about making sure you can get what you need for your E&O, your rider for your business insurance for your company.
Exactly.
Yeah. So and folks, if you want to, just to make sure you see the threat modeling thing I'm talking about, this is so great. It's Adam Shostak's world's shortest threat modeling class in 2 minutes. And it's so great. I want to always provide solutions that are fast and reasonable. That's a fast and reasonable thing to do in one of those lunch and learns, quarterly lunch and learns. I think it was Dylan that suggested it, right? It's such a great idea. Give it a crack. And I feel like these are actionable, reasonable suggestions for small businesses. What do you think, James? You seen it?
I have, I think I've seen that once before, but it's important, and that right there is probably going to be the important part. If it's dry and everything, nobody's going to want to read it. Not even us, us dedicated nerds. That's why, like, I always appreciate the Verizon, their incident report that they come out every year, the DBIR, because they always add a pinch of humor to it, so it's not just dry figures and facts. And I can appreciate that.
You're here. All right. Well, sir, I feel like we have wrung the marrow out of AI this week, which is great because I can kick it to the curb and not think about it for the next however long. I know next week we were going to be talking a little bit more about cyber insurance as well too, and how to
Yeah.
get prepared for that. We're going to talk a little bit more about the regulatory environments that exist out there, just in case anybody wants to go to sleep. Now, we'll try to make it fun. I feel like the only way to make this work is to give you short, sweet, quick information that actually is actionable. Like a small business owner who's thinking about cybersecurity and who's listening to this right now can be like, if they take nothing away from this other than that link to Adam Shostak's training, 2-minute threat modeling, and you do this literally sitting in your car at a stoplight, and you do that, you're going to already kick yourself up to the 80th percentile of small businesses in cybersecurity just from thinking about what your risk profile is. If you realize that you got a 15-person business and you got one office manager who shares a password all the way throughout their accounts at home and in person and at work, and you're like, if I just fix that one thing, that solves a major piece of our attack surface, and you do that, honestly, James, isn't that one of the biggest fixes you could imagine?
Yeah. There's
Right?
there are so many like table stakes things that I would just I would love our customers to embrace, and it would help us sleep way better at night. And so
I hear it, man. I hear it, man.
yeah.
All right. Any last questions anybody wants to ask before I ask James a question he does not know I'm going to ask him? It's a very important question. So throw those questions out there, folks. But to wrap up this week, James, I have a question for you, and then you can invent a question for me that I have to answer. But here's my question. I often ask people who haven't been on the show before, what would you do if you weren't doing information security? What's the other life you'd have? And I believe, sir, that you would run a food truck, if I recall correctly, which excellent work. I appreciate your service. It needs to be that like drunk grilled cheese one with like the dunkable, cup of tomato soup or whatever. There's
Yeah.
all kinds of options. And I think you make killer tacos too.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this question instead. If you we're about to have to roll a die. Oh, and is Una there? If you got a doggo around, you have to pay doggo tax. Apparently, we got
Yeah,
Nick asking for the doggo
office
tax.
office dogs are out in the
Office dogs are-
yard currently. I didn't want them coming in here doing barrel rolls while I was on live.
You
So
didn't want a dog to do a barrel roll in front of a camera, and you didn't think that would be
no,
better
they would
content than
not do it.
anything you would have.
They would not. That's the problem, though. They would not do that.
Yeah.
Like where I could get the camera, you would just hear it, and it'd sound like furniture was moving and growling. So,
Got it.
which could be
All right.
funny, but no, I told them that it was a really nice day and they should go outside. So,
All right. You are going to have to, in a manner of moments, decide which science fiction universe you're about to be transported into. And you've got 5 minutes to make that decision. You're going to get transported 1,000 years into the future into a science fiction universe that you know about right now. All right. And you don't know who you're going to be. No guarantee you're going to be an emperor. No guarantee you're going to be a drudge. No guarantee you're going to be a starship captain. No guarantee on anything. What is the universe that you volunteer to get transported into?
I'm going to go with Star Trek universe because I think there's obviously.
I mean, you're right, but yeah, continue.
Federation of planets, and there is still an enemy, but it's. I think that's one where then I'd be happy, if I'm still here in Iowa, cool. I'm in the birthplace of James Kirk, and I'm happy, I'm healthy, the earth isn't on fire. Because I think if you go Star Wars, you've got a strong chance that you're gonna end up on the wrong side of a lightsaber or a stormtrooper's gun. Well, actually, a stormtrooper can't hit for anything, but just Star Wars is so about conflict, and Star Trek is so about exploring new things and seeing people for who they are. So I'm good with that.
I love that.
You? Well, I mean, yes, you would say Star Trek as well. So I mean, I
would. There's an honorable mention to post Time Jump Expansiverse. Okay? The James S.A. Corey novels. Honorable mention to when Amos is running everything. And I love Sheila jumping in here on Doctor Who too. It's 1,000 years in the future. I don't know. That's actually a pretty good shot. End up on the that one big ship with the lady who's just nothing but a facelift, right? That's so great. That's a pretty good option. I'm always going to say Star Trek for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of conflict and a lot of interest, but it's like Marina Sirtis once said, right? It's a world where no one is hungry and every child knows how to read. Yeah, we'll take it. And
I
Doctor
like
Who, I mean, that whole comment is just bigger on the inside. So we'll have to deal with that next week.
that.
Thanks,
Yes.
folks.
Yes.
All right, James, it was a real pleasure being with you this week. Live long and prosper, everybody. Have a
Absolutely.
fabulous week. We'll be back again this next week at the exact same time. Join us as always live. We always love having special guests aboard. We love talking with you and having conversations about your questions and issues in cybersecurity. Invite your clients along if you want to as well too, if they ever want to just have a conversation with cybersecurity folks. This is a little bit of their kind of like, not lunch and learn because it's the wrong time for lunch everywhere, but it's coffee and learn no matter where you are, right?
And I
So
may
have a
be
great,
bringing some surprise guests next week. So
I think that's very, very possible. All right, James, my friend, have a wonderful, wonderful week. It is, as
absolutely.
always, joy filled. We're going to talk to you folks again soon.
All
See
right.
you again. All right.